Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to episode 44 of Into the Necrosphere. And as promised today, I am going to be doing a one-off special, which I will entitle HiFi, a Headbanger's Journey. Even though I have never ever referred to myself as a headbanger, but I thought it would be a nice play on words on the Sam Dunn documentary, and might drive a few extra clicks to the channel. And as you know, the channel's all about the clicks. But anyway, I'm going to be doing a rundown of of everything that's on my HiFi rack, including those boxes that you see stacked up behind me. And I'm also going to be talking to all of y'all about components that I would recommend for a starter setup at kind of a nominal budget. So that is going to be coming your way in about 5 minutes or so. But before we get to that, I have got in my possession a fucking kick-ass demo that I would like to share with you. The group, I wouldn't actually say they're not a group. They're a one-man project called Opposition, spearheaded by a friend of Into the Necrosphere who has chosen to remain anonymous. But I can tell you right now, the music does plenty of speaking for itself. So this is the first track I think that Opposition is releasing, or that this individual is releasing under the Opposition banner. The song is called One Final Death. You just listened to a track called One Final Death by Opposition, the first to be released under the Opposition banner. And like I said, that is spearheaded by a friend of Into the Necrosphere who has chosen to remain nameless. But as far as I'm concerned, that track absolutely fucking kills. A reminder that if you are in an unsigned band and you want to get your music heard and you want to be featured on the show, send me an email with a link to your demo. The address is intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. And if I like what I hear, I'll feature it on the show. And you will be able to enjoy for all of eternity the illustrious accolade of having been the demo of the week on Into the Necrosphere. Also, if you are new to the show and you don't really know what this is all about, every single week I interview folks from the death and black metal scenes. I review new music. I read the news, the metal news, I should say, and we talk a lot of trash. So if you like the show and if you like what you hear, consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. I post new episodes every Tuesday, and they drop on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else that you're going to get a podcast from. The only exception, of course, is that today I'm not interviewing anybody. You're going to get to hear me drone on for however long it ends up taking to do a virtual tour of my HiFi rack. And like I said at the very start of the show, I will also be talking about some components that I recommend if you're getting started with an audio system and you haven't recently won the lottery. So that is going to be coming your way very shortly. Straight after that, I will also be reviewing not one, not two, but 3 records, releases from earlier in the year, actually, so not brand new, but there's been a little bit of a drought as far as new music is concerned. So I figured I'd mop up some of the half one releases, and to be quite frank, I probably should have brought these up on my halftime 2020 review with Rick Eaglestone last week. But I will be talking about Graveir, Odraza and Biesy. So that is coming your way. And then, as I said, I'm going to be reading some news. Normally the way that works is I talk about the serious stuff, the cult, true, and necro stuff. And then for about 15 minutes or so, I make fun of fucking nerds and idiots like Sebastian Bach, Tommy Lee, Axl Rose, etc. Anyway, on that note, this is a virtual tour, or shall I say, strap yourselves in for a virtual tour of my HiFi rack. All right, so let's get started. High-end hi-fi. Why is it called hi-fi, and what makes it so high-end? No, I'm not going to be doing that, and I am also not going to be pulling the wool over any of your eyes. I am no expert when it comes to hi-fi. If you want a expert in hi-fi, there are many fucking fantastic channels that you can check out, including Pursuit of Perfect System, that's hosted by my friend Terry Ellis. A fantastic channel. There's Darko, there's Zero Fidelity. There is, if you're particularly interested in the home cinema game, there's Spare Change. So I want to just at the very outset of this video say I'm kind of doing this in part because I noticed a whole bunch of people on Facebook groups, forums, and in various YouTube comments say that they were, and when I say people, I mean metal folk, say that they were interested in upgrading their audio system, but they didn't know exactly where to start, or they were looking for recommendations on components. And I think that when it comes to the high-end audio game, if any of you have ever been to an audio show, generally speaking, the vast majority of people that are there are older than 55. And the music that you will hear almost consistently is any one of the first 3 Dire Straits records. So I do think the high-end audio game hasn't necessarily catered to metal folk, and because it hasn't catered to us a lot, we didn't necessarily have, or many of us didn't necessarily have a frame of reference to get started when it comes to audio. So I was talking to Matt from Antichrist Imperium and Werewolves on Facebook Messenger the other day as well, and he made a great point. There's so many metal musicians who have, fantastic instruments, but absolutely fucking terrible stereo systems. So I'm going to share with you guys exactly what I have at the moment, why I chose each one. But like I said, I'm by no means an authority. So, if you've stumbled onto this because I used the word hi-fi in the tagging, I don't want to hear any bullshit about you should have used this amp instead, or this is a better match for those speakers. Fuck off with that bullshit. Part of the fun of this hobby, much like it is with metal music, is what you learn and discover along the way. So I'll share with you what I discovered. Hopefully, you guys can pick out a few ideas out of it. And like I said, when I'm done with the virtual tour, I'll talk to you about a couple of setups that I think would be particularly good for a starter system. So I am for folks outside of the UK. I'm going to use pounds as my currency, but I mean most of these are roughly around about the same equivalent price in the US or anywhere else. I think in Australia they tend to be a little bit more expensive. And I think that's purely because of the distance that these things have to be shipped in order to hit the mainland. But what I will say to you, right at the start, firstly, there is almost nothing on my hi-fi rack that's brand new. I got almost every single thing that I have secondhand off eBay. So there are a huge number of savings to be made when you know where to look around and what to look for. And equally, it's a bit like buying a car. You can get something that is absolutely fantastic for about 60% of the price, or of the retail price, if you just wait a couple of years. So first golden rule of the audio game that I learned is don't rush to buy something brand new. Most of the time, people that are into this will look after the stuff that they have. So you're not going to get an amp as an example that has a bunch of fucking crayon, or the kids have been eating their lunches off of it. People will look after this. I mean, I would say I would look after, second only to my daughter. I don't think there's anything I look after better than any of my audio equipment. But let's get started with some actual tech talk. And I'm going to, if you are watching this on YouTube, I'll post photos and stuff on so you can see what I'm talking about. Otherwise, feel free to jump on Google and you can have visuals to accompany my dulcet tones. So I'll start with what I think is the most important part of any hi-fi setup, and that is your two front stereo speakers. And I say it's the most important part because if you're listening to music, clearly that's where most of your sound is coming from. And secondly, the two front stereo speakers are going to be what's going to inform, at least 60 to 70% of what your setup sounds like. So right now, I am fortunate enough to run the Bowers & Wilkins 803D3 speakers. It is the smallest in the 800 Diamond series that Bowers & Wilkins does, that has the turbine design, which means it has a separate turbine on top of the kind of main casing that holds the bass and mid bass drivers. That turbine casing holds a mid range driver, and then on top there's a decoupled tweeter. So you have kind of a separated, or you've got separated treble, and it just without wanting to go into too much technicality, what it does is it really helps articulate instrumentation, but also vocals. So I have been a fan of Bowers & Wilkins speakers for as long as I've gotten into this, in part because I really got turned on to them by one of my best friends who's also a hi-fi nut. And the 803s that I have, I was actually fortunate enough to be able to buy from him at a relatively on the basis of a relatively flexible payment plan, just in case any of you guys start sitting there going or wanting me to change my name to Moneybag Smith, because they are pretty pricey. But I fully concede there's no way that I would ever have been able to afford them had it not been for my mate's generosity. But anyway, that being said, they are absolutely fucking fantastic. I've heard every single speaker in the 800 Diamond series. Clearly the 800 and the 802, which are just 2 steps or a step and 2 steps above this one, are larger and they are a little bit better. But in terms of my needs, the size of the room that I have, and my budget, I very often still sit down and just have my my jaw drops in amazement at how good these speakers actually sound. Whether you're listening to metal, whether you're watching a movie, everything is crisp, clear. The bass is fast. There's tons of space between the instruments. So, if you're listening to a track where, particularly where things get really, really busy, like a fast black metal song or a fast death metal song, there's real separation and articulation between each instrument, and even when it comes to vocals, the vocals never sound piercing or shrill. Bowers and Wilkins do have a reputation for care needing to be taken in matching amps and things like that to them, and in fairness, one of the things that I very quickly learned, particularly of these 803s. Is that, for example, when it comes to cables, you can't use cable that has silver in them because it makes the treble sound a little too harsh. So you do need to be smart in terms of how you kind of match everything up. But the setup that I have it in at the moment, it is absolutely fucking top notch. Now, I drive these 803 behemoths with a ATI 6002 Morris Kessler signature power amplifier. And I partly mentioned earlier how I don't want people to be tweeting at me about what I should have done differently. Because the ATI amplifier isn't exactly the amplifier of choice when it comes to most Bowers owners. For one, it's significantly cheaper. People tend to go with Macintosh or Krell when it comes to Bowers and Wilkins, but this ATI I think is just absolutely exceptional, and I've heard it alongside amps that are significantly more expensive. And for the price I paid for it versus what I think I would need to spend in order to experience any kind of step up, I think you'd have to spend at least another £7,000 or £8,000, which I clearly do not intend to do. I think there's a number of very, very cool things about this. Firstly, there is power aplenty in this amp. It's a 300 watt amplifier, which I think is fairly conservatively rated, because I've heard other 300 watt RMS amplifiers that don't even come close to this. And by the way, that's 300 watts RMS into 8 ohms. It has an incredibly low noise floor. It has the dual separated monoblock design, so that means that for each channel, so left and right, there's a separate amplification unit inside the main casing, and those are actually kept apart, so you have no interference, no crossover, no noise. And it actually has 2 power cable or power inlets at the back as well. So each of those monoblocks are powered separately. But I think the elements about this amplifier that I love the most is, one, because it's so powerful, the amount of bass that it's able to squeeze out of those 803s is astounding. Not only is it able to squeeze a huge amount of bass out of it, but it's also incredibly fast and incredibly tight. Sometimes you find with certain amplifiers, particularly with a speaker that needs a little bit more power, the bass can sound a little bit muddy or a little bit muted, and you don't have that whatsoever. I think with ATI, it's a US brand, and the way that I would describe ATI amplifiers is very much having the American muscle sound signature. So they're quite similar to Macintoshes. They're just way cheaper. And again, if you're in the market for something that is that packs serious punch, but you don't want to spend 5 figures, I cannot recommend this highly enough. Now, I run a power amplifier, so clearly I need a preamplifier. For those folks that don't know or that are new to this game, a lot of people I've spoken to say that they run their speakers or they run their setup through an AV receiver. That's fine too, but I personally don't think it sounds as good as when you have separates or when you have a dedicated integrated amplifier. So an integrated amplifier is not too dissimilar to an AV receiver in that it houses a preamp unit and it houses a power amplifier unit as well. But the difference between an integrated amplifier and an AV receiver is clearly that the integrated amplifier runs only 2 channels, whereas the AV receiver is making room for multiple channels. In some cases up to 16. I've seen some that do 32. And so therefore you do lose a bit in terms of clarity and in terms of quality of the music. I also feel like a lot of times AV receivers can sound very thin, especially when it comes to metal. But anyway, enough of that. So in terms of my preamplifier, so I currently run the ATI power amp into a Rotel Mishi P5 stereo preamplifier. This is actually a new product. It's one of the only products that I actually bought retail. But I am very glad I did. So I used to have an older Rotel amplifier running those speakers, actually. Rotel does have they have a reputation for being good value for money, but being somewhat unrefined. Mishi is kind of the luxury brand or the sub brand that they've recently relaunched. They were around, I think, in the early 90s. And then they decided to relaunch it recently, I think, in part because I believe Bowers used to own Class A amps. They sold that. And then they work with Rotel, or they part own Rotel, and I think Mishi is kind of there to replace Class A. But anyway, the Mishi P5 power amp is I'm just an absolute fucking beast. It has a Class A input stage, at least as far as I know. So, that means that really kind of nice, warm, rolled off sound that you get that a lot of people like in vinyl, as an example, is there. It is extremely well featured. So it has its own, very high quality DAC. If you did want to play records, it has its own moving coil and moving magnet phono stage. It has Bluetooth, it has balanced XLR and RCA inputs, and it's just a beautifully designed machine. As you'll see if you're watching this on YouTube and you're seeing the picture, it also integrates really, really well into my home theater setup. So I could not be happier with this thing. And again, I think for the price, it is exceptionally good value for money. So that's my kind of basic stereo setup. Now I do actually run a separate DAC, and a DAC, in case you don't know, is a digital to analog converter. You need that anytime you're going to be listening to music through a digital source. In my case, a computer or a laptop. I like the DAC that's in the Rotel. However, I am a very, very big fan of DACs made by Chord Electronics. So I have an external DAC that I power out of that's kind of in the chain with the ATI, the Rotel. And it's a Hugo TT. So this is a older DAC that Chord made. I think they discontinued it in 2016. Another one that I got secondhand from my best mate, and a DAC I intend to keep for a while yet, because in terms of the speed, in terms of the clarity, and in terms of the finesse at which it handles music, I think it's absolutely astounding. And again, I think when it comes to Chord, whether you look at some of the smaller racks in their range, in their range, they have they've got a small DAC called a Mojo as an example, which they sell as a headphone DAC, but you can plug that into a HiFi. I think that's absolutely fucking superb. Great value for money. They then have one called Acutist, which is kind of a step up. It sells for around about £1,100. Again, absolutely top notch. And then the tabletop DACs, they can be used as preamps as well, but their principal job is that of a DAC. But I think across the range, they are incredibly well suited to metal, because again, all of those elements of the sound that's in our music that can sometimes be exaggerated and sometimes be a bit grating when it comes to high-end audio, it just seems to control, and it just seems to round it off really, really nicely. And the music just sounds incredibly polished. So the Chord Hugo TT DAC is my DAC of choice. And then the final element of my stereo setup is my subwoofer. Now, a lot of people that you talk to will say that you don't need subwoofer for stereo, and There's a lot of purists that'll say that if you have the 803s, which already have a fairly significant bass driver, you don't need a subwoofer. To them, I say, I like my music to have a pretty hefty amount of bass. And the subwoofer that I use is most definitely hefty. So I currently have in my setup an SVS SB4000 subwoofer, which is a sealed subwoofer. SVS is a company that started off as a mail order company in the States. I think they used to sell almost all of their stuff through eBay, and they've kind of gradually grown to become more popular. They actually do some really good speakers now. They also do Atmos speakers, which is speakers that you put up against your ceiling, and they do a whole bunch of other stuff. But they're best known for their subwoofers, and they make fucking fantastic subwoofers that are utterly superb value for money. So the SB4000 subwoofer is a 1,200 watt subwoofer that can peak at up to 4,000 watt, which basically means that if I'm watching a movie and that thing starts going, you're going to think that there's poltergeists on the loose in the room because shit starts moving around. I mean, in terms of how it handles music, it's very fast, very articulate. It's maybe not quite as refined as something like a REL, and REL is one of probably the biggest and most sought after subwoofer specific brands. But at the same time, I paid for my SVS probably about a third of what I would pay for anything that's even close to equivalent with REL. So it's great value for money, and it sounds fucking spectacular, which is why I use it. The other thing that's really nice about it is it has its own room correction app that you can just get onto your phone, and you can set the volume. You can actually set the parametric EQ. You can do all sorts of stuff depending on what your room is like. I will at some point add a second subwoofer because much as I would not have believed it before, the benefit and the gain that you get from a dual subwoofer setup, I think is absolutely top notch. And again, it seems to lend itself particularly well to metal. So that is that's basically my music setup. So like I said, I plug it straight into my laptop. I'm actually going to be getting setting up a gaming rig on my or right next to the HiFi rack pretty soon. So what I'll eventually have is a gaming rig that goes into my OLED television that then plugs into all of my my home theater stuff and then plugs into the stereo system. So I can play music through the stereo system via the computer. I use a player called Odraza, which is kind of an upscaling third-party player, but you can plug in Qobuz, Tidal. I think at the moment those are the only two high-end streaming services that you can plug into it. I'm hoping that they're going to add Amazon at some point because Amazon just generally tends to have better range or better more bands seem to post their stuff on Amazon than do Qobuz and Tidal. But anyway, that's what I use for stereo. So if we move on to the home theater piece. So I'll go back to the speakers and then I'll work my way into the amplifiers that power everything. So in terms of my center speaker, which I think if you are talking about a home theater setup, then as much as I said for music, your most important speakers the most important part of your system are your two stereo speakers. For home theater setup, it's very similar. The two speakers, or the two front and left speakers, because that's where your soundtrack is going to come from, and then the center speaker, because that's where the majority of all of your dialogue is going to come from. So if you have a piece of shit center speaker, the movie is going to sound like crap. I use at the moment the Bowers & Wilkins HTM2 D3 center speaker. They call it a compact center speaker, but that's compact by the standards of the 800 series Diamond speakers. It's actually pretty fucking massive. I think for my speakers, I should actually have the step up, the HTM1. But they're pretty expensive, and the HTM2 that I have, I got on an absolutely extraordinary bargain on eBay. And to be fair, it actually works really, really well for what I need it for. So on top of the HTM2 D3, I then run every single thing in the home theater through an Arcam AV40 AV processor. So Arcam I'll just pause on Arcam for a second. My very first, high-end amplifiers were two very old secondhand Arcam amps. I used an Arcam A85 and I bi-amped it into an Arcam P35, which means that you have a split between what runs your highs and your mids and what runs your bass on your speakers. But anyway, I'm not gonna go into bi-amping because that's probably not what any of you guys are interested in. But anyway, the point is, Arcam has been around for ages. They make really, really great music amplifiers, but they also make, in my opinion, some of the best home theater receivers imaginable. I have actually foregone the receiver route, and I power everything with separates. So a processor doesn't actually have amplification units in everything that's inside that casing is entirely dedicated to processing and placing the sound, making the sounds as good as possible, as clear as possible. And again, once you hear the difference between running your home theater setup through separates versus a receiver, you'll never be able to go back. So the AV40 is the flagship processor for Arcam. Given the fact that it's brand new, it's Dolby Atmos enabled, it's IMAX enhanced, it supports Auro 3D, it supports a 9.1.6 setup, I believe, which means that you can have 9 speakers around, one subwoofer plugged in, and 6 speakers up on the roof. I will eventually, so as it is right now, I run a 7.1 setup. I'm going to get 4 roof speakers and a second sub, so I will run a 7.2.4 setup eventually. I won't have space for a 7. Or for a 9 speaker setup. But it's got tons of HDMI inputs. It's 4K enabled. The HDMI ports that it has is an HDMI 2.0B. You guys will, if you're really deeply into the shit, you will have heard that at some point they're going to be replacing HDMI 2.0 with 2.1, which is going to be a big step up in terms of picture quality. I can definitely say from my experience, the HDMI 2.0B it already makes a fucking huge difference just in terms of how clear everything is. I've recently finished The Last of Us 2 on the PS4, and I played probably half of it through my old receiver, and then half of it through the Arcam AV40, and again the difference is astounding. This is very extravagant in terms of price. I mean the retail price is $3,790 for the Arcam, and I think they're actually talking about a price hike at some point. But you get what you pay for, and it is once you have it set up properly, once you have the room correction done, and it's integrated properly into your system, there is literally nothing like it. I will never ever let this thing go. As a matter of fact, I keep joking with my girlfriend that I may replace her in the bed and just cradle the AV40 when I go to sleep. Now, anyway, like I said, I'm running my home theater through separate. So the way that I've got it set up is my ATI runs obviously my 2 side speakers. That's a 2-channel amplifier. For the remaining 5 channels that I need amplification for, I've gone with an Emotiva XBA5 Gen 3 5-channel amplifier. XBA is similar to SVS in the sense that it's very much seen as a value brand. And in my view, it is great value. Emotiva make really good speakers as well. When I say really good speakers, I mean really good speakers for the money. They also do home theater receivers, they do processors, and they do amplifiers. I think that you can't go wrong especially if you're on a budget and you want to put together something that sounds good. But again, you don't want to forego your mortgage or waste the kids' college fund. Then the Emotiva is a really, really great option. And for what I use it for, which is to power my center speaker, my 2 side surround speakers, and my 2 rear surround speakers, it is absolutely fucking top notch. For my side surrounds, I use an older speaker, which I bought recently on a whim, actually, on eBay. When my 40th birthday trip to South Africa got cancelled, I decided I'm going to do something to make myself feel a little less depressed. And I bought myself a set of old Bowers & Wilkins CM5 speakers on eBay. I paid about, I think, 400 quid for them. And because we were in lockdown, the guy sent them in an Uber. So it was a nice night. It was a not as nice as going to South Africa and safaring and shark cage diving, but it was it helped ease the pain. And as I said, I paid next to nothing for them. So they are my side surround speakers. And then for my rear surround speakers, I've got an older pair of Bowers & Wilkins CM1. CM1 are the smallest speakers in the CM range that Bowers made. And if you kind of want to know where things sit in terms of the tiers of pricing, capability, etc. Right now, Bowers do 600 series, 700 series, and 800 series for their HiFi speakers. CM used to be what is now called 700 series. So the CM1 and the CM5 come out of the mid tier. The 800 comes obviously from the upper tier. But when it comes to kind of rear surround, side surround, I'd say for side surround, you will notice a big difference if you have a bigger speaker. I mean, you obviously don't have to get a fucking massive floor stander as your side surround because it's not going to use a huge amount of bass. But if the speaker is a bit bigger and there's a bit more heft to it, you will notice a difference. For the rears, it's less so because especially if you're running a 7.1 setup, there's not a huge amount of stuff that actually supports 7.1, or at the very least, there's much less content than you think that supports 7.1. But even if it does, it's the odd sound that comes into the very back. The vast majority of the ambience that you get will come from your side surrounds. So if you are thinking of putting together a 7.1 setup, and you want to know where to prioritize your money, in an ideal world, you'd have the same for everything. But if you don't have the money for that, then prioritize the side surrounds. So that is my home theater setup. Obviously, my subwoofer doubles up when I watch movies as well and when I play games. And so now let's start talking about cables, because one of the most contentious issues when it comes to cabling in the HiFi game is that a lot of people will scream and yell snake oil, and they'll break out all their little fucking scientific gadgetry and all their bullshit to show you, that the 2 cents rubbish copper crap that they can buy from the hardware store is exactly the same as the cable that you're paying £100 or £200 for a meter for. I can tell you right now, my girlfriend, who's not into the audio game whatsoever, can hear a difference between it. My mom, who's got hearing problems, can hear a difference between cabling. And that's doing completely blind tests with them. So whatever those folks say, they have no fucking idea what they're talking about. The only reason that they say it is because they can't afford more expensive cables. I myself can't afford the most expensive of the expensive cables either. But I don't sit and talk out my asshole like these people. So that rant over, let me tell you what cable I use at the moment. So for my front stereo speakers, I use a set of Black 2 speaker cable by a company that's based right here in the UK called Delirium Q. I fucking love these cables, and if I had the money, I would probably do all of my cables with them, or at the very least, all of my speaker cabling. Black 2 again is kind of in the mid-range of what Delirium Q offer. It's not too expensive. It's £54 a meter at retail price here, and you need about, what I have here is about probably 2.5 meters each side. But just in terms of the clarity, precision, how well they pair up with the speakers and with the amplifiers, absolutely top notch. I cannot fault them, and they're copper cables as well. So that really sort of shrill, off-putting treble that I mentioned before, it doesn't have that, which is great. So that's my those are my side speakers. For my center speaker, I'm actually still using an AudioQuest Rocket 33 cable. I used to have AudioQuest Rocket 33s on my side speakers as well, but when I got these Delirium Qs, stuck those on eBay. I'll probably at some point replace the Rocket 33 as well. I'm not the biggest fan of that particular cable, and to be very honest with you, I got caught out because if I read enough reviews, I probably wouldn't have bought it either. The reviews kind of said exactly what I've experienced, which is that cable's characteristic is a little bit muffled, and especially when you've got the Telerium Qs running your side speakers, I can sometimes pick it up in the center speaker, and I just don't massively like it. Which is not to say Audio Quest don't make top-notch stuff, because a lot of my other cabling and a lot of my other products are Audio Quest. So I have, for my side and rear surrounds, I will be buying Audio Quest Rocket 11 cabling. So Rocket 11 is the entry in their Rocket series, and they have, they have, I think, Rocket, then they have Mythical Creatures, and I don't think they got Statement. I think Statement is Telerium Q. But I mean, they have speaker cable that goes up to like £3,000-4,000 per meter. I have spent a fair bit of money on my HiFi, but I'm also not fucking insane. But the Rocket 11s, I think, are perfectly adequate for surround speakers. They kind of have the bit of the hi-fi quality to them, but at the same time, because you're having to stick them around all sorts of nooks and crannies and stuff like that, they are more pliable, and I think they will work really, really well for that. So I'm buying those when we move house and I reset up everything in my new place. And then I also run a Niagara 1200, what they call a noise dissipation system. It's a power conditioner made by Audio Quest. It's actually brand new, and what it is it's a mains block that has that effectively cleans up the power that goes into it. So there's a huge amount of noise that sits in your circuitry because of every appliance that's plugged into it, and all of the Wi-Fi signals and the Bluetooth waves that are going around your house. It creates noise in your speakers, noise that you don't even necessarily hear, but that does actually affect the sound. And when you plug one of these babies into the wall, and you plug your sources and your amps into the outlets, it makes a fucking enormous difference. And again, it's one of those things where you'll find a lot of people will go, "That's snake oil. How can you buy that? The readings don't confirm it." Fucking bullshit. I didn't believe it either. As soon as I heard it, I was like, God damn, that does make a huge difference. Speaking of things that make a huge difference, connecting my Niagara 1200 to the wall is one of the biggest bargains that I got on eBay, an Audio Quest high current Thunder cable. So the Thunder cable, as you can see from the picture, if you left it out in the middle of the night, someone would think they're about to step on a snake. It is fucking enormous. It's really heavy, but it makes such an extraordinary difference to the sound. I actually plugged it into my directly into my subwoofer a little while ago just to hear what it did to that. And if I had the money, every single thing I have would be powered by these cables. It's quite extraordinary. But that is pretty much the whole kit and caboodle. So by way of summary, my front stereo speakers are Bowers & Wilkins 803 D3. Center speaker is a Bowers & Wilkins HTM2 D3. The side surround and rear surround are Bowers & Wilkins CM5 and CM1 respectively. I have an SVS SB4000 subwoofer. I have a Telerium Q Black 2 cabling doing my front stereo, and I will have Audio Quest cabling doing the rest, and probably a Telerium Q cable to do my center pretty soon. I have an ATI 6002 amplifier, power amp, that is plugged into my Rotel Mishi P5 preamplifier. And that preamplifier works in partnership with a Chord Hugo TT DAC. And then finally, when I watch movies, when I flip on a porno, no, I don't. My girlfriend will kill me. I use my Arkham AV40 AV processor, and I power the surrounds and the center speaker with an Emotiva XBA5 Gen 3 amp. And if you've made it up to this point and you're not yet asleep, Thank you very much. Let's listen to some music, and then I will go through some components that you can check out if you want to. If you're getting started, if you don't want to break the bank, I kind of set myself the challenge of a nominal budget and started putting together what I think is a really cool system with that. Yeah, like I said. If you're still with me, thank you very much. This is a track off of the forthcoming Panzerfaust record, and if you are listening to this on any sort of decent speakers, then turn it up loud, and if the neighbors complain, tell them to go fuck themselves.
In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. There will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory. The sensation of trampling on enemies helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine the boot stamping on a human face forever.
You just listened to The Snare and the Fowler by Panzerfaust, and that is off their forthcoming record called The Sons of Perdition 2. I posted about this on social media not too long ago, and I said this was my most looked forward to record of 2020. It is just, I mean, this song and the other track that they've released off this album is just absolutely fucking staggering. So I can't wait to hear it. Hopefully, when that record is out, they will no longer ignore my emails and they'll come onto the show. Like I said, I'd exchanged messages with them about coming on, and they big timed me after saying that they would. So anyway, let's talk about a couple of starter setups. So what I did when I put this together was I gave myself a budget of £2,000. And I would say the equivalent to this is these. If you bought these in the States, for those of you folks that aren't listening in the US, these would probably be around $2,000, maybe a little bit more in Australia. What I would say is this can kind of, if you don't have a setup and you want to start putting something together, use this as a starting point. Follow my rule and go onto eBay first, because there's a very good chance you're going to get these things cheaper on eBay. Or also look at earlier components from that manufacturer, or look at kind of earlier models in the range that I mentioned. So what I've done is I've said £2,000. I myself don't own vinyl and I don't listen to vinyl, but I know that a lot of you guys do. So the prerequisites for this system was that each of the amplifiers that I'm talking about needs to have a DAC so that you can listen to music through a digital source, so computer. It has to have a phono stage so you can plug in your record player, and obviously it needs to be an integrated amplifier, so you've got the preamp and the power amp in one casing, so that you also don't need to have a bunch of expensive separates to run everything. I've then also included a subwoofer in each setup, and again, like I said, there's a school of thought. The thought of fucking nerds, in my opinion, that you don't need a subwoofer when it comes to stereo. But I don't believe that is the case, and I think especially with metal, there's nothing better than a sub that fucking smacks you in the face. So I've included a sub, and I've also included a record player. So let's talk speakers in the first instance. So I've got three that, were I putting together this $2,000 system, these would be on my short list. The first is the Bowers & Wilkins 606 bookshelf speakers. They have won multiple Speaker of the Year awards from multiple websites. I think What HiFi had them as Speaker of the Year. My friend Terry Ellis recently did a review on his channel, Pursuit of Perfect System, and he raved about them. My brother-in-law actually bought a pair at my recommendation, and he absolutely loves them. So whilst they're not absolutely massive, they pack a fucking hefty punch. And there is trickle-down technology all the way from the 800 series into the 600 series. So Bowers & Wilkins, I think, have done a really, really good job here. Plus, the retail price of these speakers in the UK is only £549, which I think for what you're getting is exceptionally good value. The second option that I would consider is the Wharfedale Evo 4.2. Wharfedale is kind of like I used to think was an old man's brand, and we were at the Bristol Hi-Fi show in February, and they had a pair of Wharfedale Lintons there that really do look like old man speakers, but I was so surprised by what I was hearing. Just loved the roundedness of the sound, the warmth. I thought it handled bass really, really well. It kind of just had a classic hi-fi sound that I can see working exceptionally well, whether you're listening to Dark Throne or whether you're listening to fucking Burzum or Marduk or whatever you're into. I think they are great, and I think these Wharfedale Evo 4.2s are tremendous value for money. Again, Terry posted about this on Pursuit of Perfect System, so you can check out his review, and I'll post a link to his channel in the description of this as well. But the Wharfedale Evo 4.2s are available for £599, I should say. And they're also bookshelf speakers, as is my third contender for speakers in my starter system, the Klipsch RP600M. I mean, there's a whole bunch that I could have put in here. The KEF LS50s are really, really good. Q Acoustics do great speakers and great value for money. My first speakers that I ever had were Q Acoustics. But I would say the Klipsch kind of won out for me. Again, they're a US brand. They have that sort of American muscle feel to them. I've heard them used really, really well in home theater systems. They sound really good when it comes to music. And I think when it comes to a good value option, I think they are superb. So they're the more expensive of the options that I listed. The UK price anyway is £625. But I would most definitely recommend them. We move on to amplifiers. So if I were to look at three options for amplifiers, the first one I'd look at would be the Audiolab 6000A. Again, I heard these with the Wharfdale Lintons when I was in Bristol, and I was blown away by how good the sound was for a amplifier that cost £599. I've heard amplifiers that cost £3,000 that don't sound any way as good as this. Audiolab position themselves as a value brand. Definitely from my perspective, the reputation and the positioning is well founded. The next amplifier that I would consider is for a similar price, the Emotiva BASX TA100. There's a guy called the Audioholic. I think no, it's not the Audioholic. It's the Audiophiliac. Steve, the Autophiliac, I think. He used to be on CNET. He has his own channel on YouTube now. He loved this amp. And like I said to you guys, I run an Emotiva amp as part of my home theater setup. And I think that for what you're getting for the price there, you'd be very, very hard pressed to get better value for money. And then the final one that I would recommend is a PS Audio Sprout 100. It may be about the size of a Bible, the Satanic Bible, but it's a seriously hefty piece of kit. 50-watt amplifier. It has a DAC. It has a phono stage. It's essentially everything that you need in one small box. And especially, if you have a spouse who has forced you to set up your listening room in a study, or you don't have a particularly big living room, it's a great amplifier to have because it doesn't take up a huge amount of space. Okay, so then let's talk record players. I am by no means an authority on record players, so I'm not going to go into detail on any of these. I know that Rager make fucking badass record players. I think Matt Wilcock from Antichrist Imperium just bought himself a Rager turntable, which he loves. So I've got the Rager Planner 1 for $249.99. The Project T1 for $239.99, and then the Denon DP300F for $249.99. Those I think would do the job across the piece. And then for subwoofers, I've got the SVS SB1000, which is the baby brother of the SB4000 fucking Colossus that I have. But anything that has the SVS name on packs enough punch to put you flat on your ass. I've got the Rel T0, which is at the moment only £249. It's not a particularly big sub, but again, I think when it comes to folks that have smaller rooms that have more restrictions on space, I think it's a great option. And then the ELAC Debut 2.0 sub 3010. ELAC is another very, very good value for money speaker brand. You could probably look at any one of their floor standers or their bookshelves as well if you're looking to put together a cost conscious setup. The ELAC Debut sub, extremely highly rated, on a par with the quality that their speakers have. I used to run an ELAC sub in a gaming setup a couple of years ago, and it was fucking monstrous. So those are options that I would all consider if I'm putting together a cost-effective hi-fi system, or if I'm just getting into hi-fi and I don't want to spend an arm and a leg. I think if you had a combination of any of those, you'll definitely not be you won't be disappointed in any way, shape, or form. So that is my hi-fi special done and dusted. Like I said, I'm not going to do these kinds of things frequently, but I figured that I would I'd do something a little bit different. And given the fact that so many people had spoken about being interested in these sorts of things, and wanting to hear what I use, and also thinking about how how little I knew about this 3-4 years ago. And how much fun it's been to learn, but the sheer volume of fucking YouTube videos and online articles that I've had to read to learn everything that I have. I thought I would I'd save you all some time. So I hope it's been useful. I hope it's been informative. I hope it's been entertaining. I hope you haven't gotten too bored at the sound of my voice. Let us listen to another track now before I move on to some reviews. And this is off the forthcoming Selbst album, another band that I fucking love, and I've spoken about many times before. I will get somebody from Selbst on to come and talk on the show. And when I say somebody, there's only one man, and I think he's known as Jay on Facebook. He's just called Selbst. So, but regardless of all that shit, this is a song called "The Weight of Breathing."
Nobody
was The Weight of Breathing by Selpst. It is off their forthcoming record, which is due out in August on Deborah Morty Productions. Deborah Morty, as I've said many times before, is one of my favorite record labels. And in terms of the album title, I think it's called Relatos de Angustia, which translates to Stories of Anguish. As I've said before, the debut Selpst album that came out about, I think it was 4 years ago, is magnificent. So I have no doubt that this is going to be a fucking beast. And speaking of beasts, Graveir out of Brisbane, Australia, have put out their second record. This album came out in April, I believe. I actually was not familiar with Iconostasis, which was the first album that they put out in 2016. But this came up on Black Metal Promotions, and I was hugely impressed. I'm generally speaking almost always impressed with Australian bands anyway. There is something about music that's written in Australia. I cannot put my finger on it, but there's something that always sounds a little bit different in a really good way. I remember hearing bands like Alchemist and, thinking to myself that, Alchemist should have been one of the biggest bands on the planet. Were it not for the fact that they were based out of Australia, I think they would have been. I remember the Amenta coming out of Australia and just absolutely blowing my mind, with each and every album that they brought out. And then there's all sorts of other fucking cool bands like, Destroyer 666, Psychroptic. I talk about werewolves all the time. And Graveir is kind of the same. There's very much a nod to second wave northern black metal on this record. But there's a distinctly Antipodean flavor to it that just gives it kind of a very unique style and sound. I think one of the things that Graveir does very well on this record as well is they keep things slow and deliberate for the most part. So there are some blast beats, but relative to their peers in this game, they tend to not rely on it very much. And I think that's a very good thing. So I am going to play a track off of King of the Silent World. This is a song called In Remnant Light. by Graveir out of Australia. The song is called In Remnant Light, and the album is King of the Silent World. An absolute beast of a record. And speaking of beasts, Odraza out of Poland. This year, I know I've raved a lot about everything that's coming out of Iceland. You've had Hellfro, Elmirk Me, Carpe Noctem put out their split EP. I mean, there's so many fucking great bands that have come out of Iceland this year. It's unbelievable. But I feel like recently the Polish contingent has looked at their Iceland or their Icelandic counterparts, and they've said, "Hold our pineapple flavored vodka," and they have put out some absolute bangers of their own. Odraza being one of them. So the album in question is entitled Rexum. I think that's how you would pronounce it. As you can tell from my rape of the Polish language there, the entire album is in Polish. The band have been around now since 2009. They actually had a full length that came out in 2014 called Esperalem Carne. I don't know that album, similar to the situation with Graveir, but this was another find off of Black Metal Promotion, and I was highly impressed with it. First of all, in terms of the actual recording quality, this is an absolute contender for the kind of album that you would test your hi-fi system with. It is beautifully produced. Everything sounds really crisp and clear. When it starts off, the album starts off, blasting and angry, and you kind of get the sense that you're about to hear another kind of blackened death Polish export, which is not a bad thing. And then the album starts going into all sorts of crazy directions. You've got this almost sort of abstract funeral mist type atmosphere that comes in, so with these long breaks, things kind of slow down to a crawl. You have minimal use of instruments, before it launches into another blast. And then there's a bunch of really avant-garde moments as well. So there's parts of the album that reminded me of Octurus. There's parts of the album that remind me of more traditional Polish black metal fare, but on the main, this is an absolute monster of an album, and one that I would say meets with the very highest seal of my approval. I'm going to play the title track off of the album now. This is a song called, and again, I apologize to Odraza if I'm fucking up the pronunciation of this title, but Rexum. That was a track called Zedzom off the album of the same name. And note, I've corrected the pronunciation of that title. The band is called Odraza. Inexplicably, the album is, I believe, was it released independently. So for some bizarre reason, they're not signed. But fantastic record, fantastic band. And on the topic of fantastic music out of Poland, Biesy is another another hidden gem of 2020, in my opinion. Biesy is a one-man project, or a one-person project, I should say. I don't want to misgender Faustina, depending on what they prefer to be known as. But the record is called Trance Satanism. The label, it's been put out on Gods of War Productions. Really, really interesting stuff. I mean, first of all, Faustina's presentation is kind of like crazy new wave drag queen black metal vibe, which I think is very, very cool and, very different. I think somebody on No Clean Singing said that, it'll piss off the purists. I'm sure it will, but I don't give a fuck. I think it just shows kind of what I've been saying all along with how far black metal has come, where, people that are in the black metal scene can be free to sing about and do whatever they want and present themselves however they want. To Gal's point, black metal is all about freedom, and definitely trance Satanism. I feel like both from an image perspective and also musically, really, really brings a lot of that to life. What you will hear on this record is a fucking fantastic blend of new wave, black metal, industrial, and the album can go from really atmospheric and really melodic to just kind of wouldn't say militant, but almost that kind of god flesh pummeling, very deliberate, angry vibe, but through the prism of black metal. So I love this album, and I am going to be playing the first track off of it right now to give you a feel for what it sounds like, by the band Biesy, in case you blacked out during the last 2 minutes. Off the album Trance Satanism, this song is called IHS.
pod język, nie do siebie. Wiedzę się tobą, ale nie wykluczam. Zawsze to jakaś opcja zbawienia. Może być dostawa do domu, ale łatwość z wylewem. Podobnie już usłyszałem. Tutaj co prawda sucho, ale nie ma dowodów, że jesteśmy na szczycie. Tutaj co prawda sucho, ale nie ma dowodów, że jesteśmy na szczycie. Bomba, herbata, kurwa zagłada.
HS by Biesy off of the album Trans Satanism, available right now on Gods of War Productions. I will post a link to the bandcamps for Graveir, Odraza, and Biesy in the description of this podcast. And if you go on there and buy some merch, or you buy yourself some music, then let them know that Into the Necrosphere sent you. Like I said, these albums have been out for a while, but I thought that I would I'd talk about them just for the sake of completion, because I didn't mention them on last week's show, and they've kind of been on my radar for a while, but because things have been so quiet recently, I went back to them and paid them some proper attention over the course of the last 2 weeks, and I fucking loved what I heard. So anyway, let's get on with some metal news. We'll start with the serious stuff first. Right here on Metal Storm. So Disillusion premiere, new single and lyric video. I don't know Disillusion very well. I do know Sepulchral Curse, however. They are actually releasing their debut full length tomorrow. Today is the 30th of July, by the way, so by the time that you guys see this album will already be out. It's coming out via Transcending Obscurity Records. It's pretty cool, old school death metal. And done with kind of a Nordic vibe, considering the fact that they come from Finland. Although don't expect a lot of melody, because there is none. But I think it's very cool, and I will probably be talking about that album in more detail on the show at some point in the not too distant future. Marilyn Manson announces new record. Boo to Marilyn Manson's new album. I think the last decent thing that he made was Hollywood. And after that, it was a fucking absolute load of dog shit. And honestly speaking, I know this is rich coming from somebody that listens to black metal, but he looks like a turd. He needs to do something about his makeup and about his stage presentation. He just, I don't know. Marilyn Manson for me are for 16-year-olds. I think you kind of outgrow it later on, and I'll go back to stuff like Antichrist Superstar. And maybe to Mechanical Animals, but it's largely from a nostalgic perspective. I don't really see any value in anything else that he's doing. Whoredom Rife releasing a 7-inch EP next month. The EP is going to be called Ride the Final Tide. There is a huge amount of hype around Whoredom Rife, not least of all by people in the industry. Like I continually see guys in different bands sharing Whoredom Rife music, and really seeming to be well into this band. Everything I've heard of them so far, I've loved as well. I wouldn't call myself the biggest fan on the face of the earth, and I probably need to spend a bit more time with their last record. But I believe that a new one is in the work. So if you're a fan of Whoredom Rife, much to be excited about. Il Nino apparently is also producing new music. Why they are featured on Metal Storm, fuck knows. I personally think that they are a load of wank. Acurion present a new official video clip. I was about to skip this, and then I saw that it features a vocalist, Mike DeSalvo, formerly of Cryptopsy. So, in case you guys don't know, Mike DeSalvo was the vocalist on Whisper Supremacy and And Then You'll Beg, which in my view are two of the most underrated Cryptopsy albums ever. I will most definitely want to check this out. As a matter of fact, let's do that right now, and let's see if there's a clip here. And we can do a bit of a react. What is the song called? Petals from a Rose Eventually Wither to Black. Let's give this a crank and hear what it sounds like. Obviously, in the UK, broadband is not what it should be, so this will take a while. But it should kick off in a second. It doesn't sound too bad. I'm not so sure I like all of the melody so much. However, I'm going to pause it right there. I've just noticed this as well. This video for Petals from a Rose Eventually Wither to Black is a meaningful one because in addition to filming our parts in quarantine, some very special, never-before-seen footage of Mike's late wife, Genevieve DeSalvo, was used as she had performed her final recording performance on this song before her tragic passing. That fucking sucks. I am very, very, very sorry to hear that, Mike. If one day you should stumble upon this, I'll check out a Curion. There's certain types of melody that I'm not necessarily a fan of. That you heard right there seems to inch toward that style. But I've always loved Mike's vocals. Fun fact: when I was in Imperial Empire with Lee from Unblessed Divine, I tried my very best to sound like Mike DeSalvo. So I'll check that out for sure. But man, how fucking sad is it for a dude in his, I think in his early 40s, as far as I know, to have lost his wife. I actually recently, in fact today, I was browsing about on Facebook, and there's a guy that I used to go to school with. So he's 41 because I was a year younger than everybody else in my year. But he passed away of a massive heart attack, which fucking terrifies me and makes me more resolute than ever to take care of the old diet and make sure I get enough exercise and stuff like that because. Yeah, man, just, to die at such a young age when you've got a, young family and a wife and things like that, that sort of shit fucking terrifies me. Rebellion have released a new track and a lyric video. Today, Brazilian death metalers Rebellion revealed a brand new track called Vile, part of the forthcoming studio album tentatively slated for release in autumn 2020. Years back, a friend of mine in Germany, Matthias, who, by the way, is the reason I started writing for Chronicles of Chaos, and in some ways you could say is probably the reason why this podcast exists, sent me a Rebellion record. He burnt me a bunch of CDs, and he had Rebellion in a care package for me, Conquerors of Armageddon by Crisian, and that Rebellion record was great, so I'll definitely check this out. But so new track is out, new album coming out later this year. Uada announced headlining European tour dates for 2021. I hope that those actually manage to happen. I see that our illustrious leaders are talking about a potential second wave. There is no fucking second wave until the first wave has been vanquished, and that will not happen until there has been an actual vaccine. I can't understand why people continually go on about the second wave shit. Like, speak to a first-year medical student and they will, they're being completely honest. They will probably tell you exactly the same thing that I just said. But so fucking annoying that, the lockdown, all this crazy shit has to happen for a disease where I think the recent numbers that I saw was that the fatality rate for this disease in Florida was 1.7% and 3.2% in New York, where it was at its highest. I don't know about London, but I think we're talking about 0 point something. But for that, the entire economy has to get fucking derailed and turn into a pile of shit. Anywho, Crippled Black Phoenix are now premiering the first track of their upcoming album, Ellengast. Like I said, I like Crippled Black Phoenix a lot. I used to be friends with one of the original guitarists in Crippled Black Phoenix. I would have him on the show were he not so woke that I know we will almost definitely have an argument within about 5 minutes. Mork Grinning. I heard the trailer for this. So Mork Grinning are a band from way, way back. I remember seeing them. I think this was like 1994, 1995, back when I was leafing through Nuclear Blast catalogs, trying to translate the German into something coherent so that I could decide on what to buy. I think we may even have ordered a Mork Grinning album. But they're back at it now. They've slapped on the corpse paint again. They're stalking the forests. And Season of Mist has decided there's money to be made there. So their new record is coming out on October 23rd, 2020. The trailer sounded pretty cool. So I will for sure be checking that out. Armored Saint, new album due in October. Don't like Armored Saint. But let me just say once again, as I've mentioned many, many times on this show, I love John Bush. I think he's firstly a great guy. And not only is he a great guy, but he's a vastly superior frontman to Poodle Hair Belladonna for as far as Anthrax is concerned. That's pretty much it. We're back to the Nightingale's dog shit that I spoke about last week. Chelsea Wolfe is releasing a collaboration with Ben Chisholm. I don't know who Ben Chisholm is. I do know that that Miss Piss album, or Mrs. Piss, or whatever the hell it was called, is not bad, but I must confess, I lost a bit of respect for Ms. Wolfe after that. I just think it's the worst name for a band that I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. Right, so let's move on to Blabbermouth. Corey Taylor on debut solo LP. This was probably the most enjoyable album I've done since the first Slipknot album. I might stand to be corrected here, but has he not said many times about how the first Slipknot album was really difficult for them to do, and they were about to kill each other in the studio and all this fucking bull mash? Either way, I don't give a fuck about his dumbass solo album, and I'm sure it'll sound just as atrocious as everything that Slipknot has brought out for the entirety of their discography. System of a Down's bassist North Kingsley project to release first music next week. It's been funny to see this back and forth between John Dalmayan, the drummer, and Serge, liberal Charles Manson Tankian. I have to hand it to John. I think he's a ballsy dude considering the general social temperature at the moment and all the stuff that he's been saying on social media. But I like it, and I like the fact that he and Serge, openly can disagree with each other and still seem to get along. I must admit, I question how sincere that getting along is. I think if you got those two in a room, I suspect they may probably be at each other's throats before very long. Either way, I think the name North Kingsley for a band is terrible. I mean, can you just imagine getting on stage? Hey, everybody, we're North Kingsley. Fuck this place up. That's not for me. So anyway, Fear Factory's Dino Cazares, my playing was never influenced by Pantera. This I also thought was a bit odd, because wasn't Dino one of the dudes that was posting every 5 seconds on the socials about Dimebag pretty much as soon as Facebook was invented? I mean, I know Dimebag's passing predates Facebook and whatnot, but I just feel like I've heard Dino talk about Dimebag and about how Dimebag influenced him a lot. I might be hallucinating that, but I feel like that's something that happened. Mastodon to release new single Fallen Torches this Friday, medium rarities compilation due in September. Very much looking forward to this. I fucking love Mastodon. I've always loved them. I think I've spoken about this on the show before, but I remember seeing those dudes in the Brixton Academy. Sorry, not Brixton Academy, in the Camden Underworld. And there was probably about no more than about 100 people in that venue, if 100. And I turned to a friend of mine, George, who was with me at the time, and I said to him, dude, I guarantee you in about 2 years' time, it's going to be one of the biggest bands on the planet. And lo and behold, I saw them when they had released Remission. About 2-3 years later, they were headlining the Brixton Academy for 3 sold-out nights. You could just tell straight away, like this was a band that was from a performance and a presence perspective, a band that was many, many tiers above everything else that was coming out. And what I do like about them as well is that they've been successful entirely on their own terms and on their own merit. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure it'll be a fucking great song. They haven't ever really released anything that's been shit. And I'll tell you this much: if you want to laugh your ass off, I've spoken before about the Jamie Juster podcast. Check out any of the episodes where he had Brent Hines on as a guest. I think the first one that he had him on, I was laughing so much in the car that I nearly had to pull over because I had tears streaming down my cheeks from the shit this guy was was coming up with. Why that dude doesn't have a reality show based about him or based around him or a podcast of his own, I don't know, because he is just a super entertaining dude. Great guitarist as well. Let's see what else there is to talk about. Don't care about Deep Purple. This was fucking funny. Metallica's Lars Ulrich has no regrets about Saint Anger snare drum sound. I stand behind it 100%, man. God, is Saint Anger shit. But as I've said to folks in private, and I might have mentioned it on the show a couple of times too, I don't find the snare drum on that album as offensive as I do some of the lyrics. I still don't get how somebody who wrote lyrics as brilliant as the lyrics to Fade to Black, The Thing That Should Not Be, Sanitarium, Master of Puppets, Eye of the Beholder, could write down, could put pen to paper and go, my lifestyle determines my death style, and go, yeah, this sounds fucking great. Or frantic tick, tick, tick tock. I don't think my heart as a music fan has ever been so broken as when I saw Some Kind of Monster. And the pile of steaming shit that was Saint Anger that spawned from those from that period of disarray in Metallica it just reminds me of that of that feeling. I get that same feeling of disappointment and hurt as a dude that had Metallica posters adorning every inch of my walls for a period of my teenage years. So yeah, like I said, I think the snare drum sound is terrible. I mean, it sounds like he's playing drums on coffee cans. He's not a particularly great drummer, so it makes him sound even worse than he would normally do. But by no means is the drum sound the thing that I find most reprehensible about that record. What I hate most about that album is James's lyrics. And in fairness, he's not done much better on albums since. On Death Magnetic, there's a song, I think the third track, where he sings, what don't kill you make you more strong. I swear to God, my daughter could come up with something fucking smarter and more badass sounding than that. And also more coherent. I mean, the guy sounds like he's, learning disabled. Speaking of learning disabled, Sebastian Bach, I miss smarts in the White House, dude. In a new interview with Esquire, former Skid Row singer and all-around asshole Sebastian Bach was asked if he feels like the past 4 years under President Trump have inspired him to be more political. He responded, it's never made sense to me that people would vote for a guy who hosted a TV reality show. It's also never made sense to me that people would listen to a guy whose hair looks like it was stolen from 1,000 Barbie dolls and who is such a complete and utter fucking wank stain of a man. Jeremy Spencer leaving Five Finger Death Lunch. I hate Five Finger Death Lunch. And one day I'll reveal to you all a secret about that band, or actually an interaction I had with that band that is going to set the world on fire. It wasn't a direct interaction. It was actually with their manager. But let's just say I used to have some involvement in a satirical Facebook page, and I say used to. It still exists, but there was something written about Five Finger Death Lunch, and I'll leave it at that. One day I'll tell you guys some funny stories. That's why it's worth listening to the news section. You never know what's going to come up next. I spoke about Marilyn Fuckface and to release new album We Are Chaos. I spoke about James earlier. James looks like he's traded in the beer for the donuts. There's some serious jowls on that man at the moment. Dee Snider unveils music video for live version of For the Love of Metal. That's another dude who loves more than anything in the world the sound of his own voice. Like, I remember hearing him talk about For the Love of Metal, and he was talking about some of the topics they were singing about were so controversial that, there's certain people that didn't want this album to be released. It's like, do you really think anyone gives a shit? Anyway, I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is about it. We've exhausted we've mined the comedy gold that we're going to get from Blabbermouth this week. Will I take a chance and have a look at the headlines for Woke Metal Sucks, or Metal Wokes, as they should be called? Let's have a look. Normally, just the headlines on Metal Sucks is enough to fill the rest of my day with laughter and cheer. So as the hamster spins the wheel and gets this fucking pile of wank webpage loaded up, Trip Ison's former bandmate details more predatory sexual behavior. Fuck Trip Ison. But, said it before, gonna say it again. The first Static X album, Wisconsin Death Trip, I don't give a shit how non-cult, non-true, non-necro, and false it may be. I still, to this day, love it. I think I listened to it about 4 or 5 times while I was driving my daughter around this weekend. No, there's actually not much on Woke Metal Sucks that we haven't read before. See, Guar was on CNN. I swear, Guar could probably go on CNN, sing Slaughterama or something like that, and there'd be more actual news contained within the subtext and the subtleties of the song than the fucking drivel that morons like Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon and all of the gaggle of nitwits at CNN spew all the time. Right, guys, I think that is pretty much it. Let's shut this mofaggle down. I'm gonna go out and edit this sucker now. Like I said, it is very different, I know, to many of the episodes I've done before. There will not be many of these solo episodes, so if you think that I've run out of guests, that's not the case. I just thought it'd be fun to do something about HiFi because I love it, and I figured if there's a few folks out there that want to get into HiFi themselves, maybe you've learned something today. So if you have made it this far, I really appreciate it. And I really should appreciate the support and all of the kind words that I get from so many of you every week. I have got a couple of cool things in the pipeline. I'm going to mention this now because I know that not everybody listens through to the end. So if it does, hopefully this won't entirely jinx it. But the big guest that I've been talking about having on the show is Ghoul from Mayhem. So I have, and let me get my phone up, and I'm going to point the message to the camera so that you guys can see that I'm not bullshitting. But there you go. There's my exchange with Ghoul. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. And you can see he says we're going to do the interview on Friday the 7th, so next Friday. So I hope it still happens. He's a dude that I've wanted to interview for a really, really long time. So if it doesn't, it doesn't. The dude's busy, and mine is only a small, humble show. But if it does, I think we're going to have a fucking great conversation. So I will also reach out to a few people this week. I want to get AV from Abduction back on. He's just put out a split EP with, I can't remember, Nocturnal something or other. I can't remember the full name. I want to get Matt Wilcock back on again. I think it's overdue that I invite Dave Gray to come on. I don't know whether he would accept the invite, but I know that Voices are about to start recording their third record. The Antichrist Imperium album is written and ready to be recorded. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. I think they're also doing the Akrakoka record right now. There's a couple of other people that I think will be fun to have on too. The guys from Woe Betide, I played their demo last week. I think they'd be cool to have on. So anyway, there's a few good things that are going to be coming in the next couple of weeks. I'm also going to be a guest on Mike Hill's Metal Matters podcast. So if you don't listen to that, definitely check it out. It's a really, really great show. Mike is a fucking cool dude, and he and I are going to be doing the classic record series that they do on there. He wanted me to nominate something, so I gave him the option of either Gorgoroth's Ad Majorem Satanas Gloriam or Marduk's Romans 5:12, and we decided to go with Gorgoroth. So we're going to be talking about that for about an hour or so, and I'm sure that'll be a fun conversation. And then other than that, the weather is good. I've got a good weekend to look forward to. Girlfriend's going to be here, going to be doing some grilling. I finished The Last of Us 2 this week. Finally, I purposely paced myself on that game because I didn't want to finish it all in kind of 2-3 days. But I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. People that don't like that game can quite literally go fuck themselves. They don't know what they're talking about. It's one of the best games I've ever played in my life, and I actually restarted it last night. I will start Ghost of Tsushima pretty soon too, but yeah, I just Last of Us 2 is staggeringly good. If you haven't played it yet, don't let any of the fucking nonsense online put you off playing it. It's well worth giving a go. Especially if you like survival horror. If you don't like survival horror, you're a pussy. Okay, on that bombshell, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you guys tune in again next week. If you just discovered the show because I put HiFi in the tags, you probably have PTSD right now. But either way, I hope you recover and come back again next week and join the rest of us misanthropic, miserable mofos as we talk death metal, black metal, and all things cult. From the mean streets of Surbiton on the outskirts of London, I am wishing you all a fond farewell.